Alright, hello everybody. In this video I wanted to talk or yap about the sort of Necro Ritualist teaser we had in the latest ArenaNet blog post. And I had a couple of thoughts about that on stream as well, but some people wanted me to make a video about it too, and while I like to yap a lot, and I can yap a lot, that's for sure. But I felt like maybe making this video just to share my thoughts on YouTube as well. And while I want to say that I will try to keep this video short, I think by now we have all accepted, especially myself, that I just cannot make short videos at this point where I talk, because I will just talk about everything so much that I just, lose thread. But going into it, I wanted to mention that yes, I did see the teaser on stream, and I am personally actually very excited for this sort of quote-unquote ritualist necromancer, because this is definitely necromancer. We know that the necro is always depicted with the Azura on the splash arts, and they're always green, with a deep grass green, so that's almost guaranteed. And however, I'm not sure that I really want it to be called Ritualist, and I hope that they won't. I did see the Paragon as well. Honestly, I'm kind of interested in that too. I mean, it does fit into the theme with the use of the spear. Now, with the Ritualist, however, I do have to say I don't know exactly what kind of weapon will it use, but there is one suspicion, a couple of suspicion, because just to go back on their blog post real quick, there was one part where they did talk about a certain thing, which I will real quickly just quote. I will try to show this on the video as well, so if it's in my mind, I will try to show it and just highlight it there too. But on their blog post, they basically said about the new elite specializations that, quote, however, these new specializations won't come with dedicated weapons. Make a point there. Instead, each one introduces unique profession mechanics, a new trait line, utility skills, an elite skill, a healing skill, and distinct playstyles without locking you into a specific weapon or equipment loadout. Now, there is a couple of ways to sort of understand the first sentence. To me, it's most likely... Okay, to me it is most likely and most obvious that they will simply not give the new elite specs new weapons, but I also have a tiny little tingle that what if they kind of do? Because the first sentence just says that the specializations won't come with dedicated weapons. Just like how the previous ones, for example, for Necro, Reaper came with Greatsword, then you had the Scourge with the Torch, and we had Harbinger with the pistol, for example. And they originally were quite locked into. If you wanted the pistol, you were locked into Harbinger. You couldn't really do much. Obviously, they have changed it since Soto, because now you can access all the weapons with the weapon proficiency. But after that, it's a little bit strange to read that it doesn't come with dedicated weapons. And it feels like that doesn't necessarily mean by now that you are locked into it, because you can't really be locked into it. But the build, or sort of more like the trait line, will not be focusing on that single weapon that the elite specialization came with. Just like how the Reaper and the others were originally. And they kind of still are, if I'm honest about it. Now, to me, I give it maybe a 5% chance, honestly, that they might actually come with a new weapon that you couldn't access previously. But I feel like they will actually just make it, because they mentioned that they want to make these more work with the previous weapons as well. And obviously they will probably want to, mostly coming from just this Paragon teaser. And if you don't know what Paragon is, just look up Guild Wars 1. Honestly, if you haven't played Guild Wars 1, then you will understand quickly. Paragon was basically very similar to Warrior, but it was a spear wielding, kind of close to it. I can't really describe it honestly, because I don't really have words for it, or what Paragon exactly is, and I don't really want to just quote the wiki itself, but it was basically very, very similar. It was more of a semi-support sort of character honestly, that you could play, or profession rather, that you could play, and it had a really cool concept, but it kind of fell off really hard, honestly, in Guild Wars 1. But I will not go about that because the video was not about that. But considering that they show the Paragon, or quote unquote Paragon, with a spear, that very much gives me the impression that they want to build in to these new elite specializations the previous weapons that we got from Soto, and the spears each class also got from Gentile Wilds. Now, if I look at the Ritualist, and I'm not really sure how the spear will work on it. They basically mention that they will have distinct playstyles. Now, that to me gives me the impression immediately that just that trait line that we will get with these elite specs will mostly give us different playstyles, while also coming with a unique profession mechanics, obviously. But that could actually very much easily mean that they could push in the spear as well, but not necessarily with just the spear and just saying that like, oh yeah, the spear gets like X of damage or whatever, but specifically making trait lines that where the spear also fits in. And the way I had my thoughts about this is that I think the way they will do this, that they don't want to lock you into a specific weapon or loadout, which is a little bit strange to see or strange to read to me, that they talk about equipment loadout, because I'm not exactly sure what that's supposed to mean. Like, is it like that you are condition or power? Because that just doesn't really make much sense to me. But I'm not sure if they're gonna go with the same sort of streamlining like they did in End of Dragons, where basically almost every elite spec there, each of their lines inside their trait lines, like, you know, if you picked all of the top ones or the middle one or the bottom one, they were like, oh, like, okay, this is purely condition damage. The middle one is like sort of a support, and the bottom one is like, okay, you have power now, and it just supports that. But I'm not really sure if they go with something similar or they want it to be more free. But I think they will very much go with something very similar that they did in EOD in the end, where it would yield you, but probably a little bit less strict, possibly, which I'm not exactly sure how you could do that, but that's my sort of idea about it, which I wouldn't mind, because if we do get something like the Ritualist, now talking more about the Ritualist again, and less about just the trait lines or what they mean on the blog post, we can see this sort of spirit, which is obviously comes from the EOD. It's basically the same model that we've seen before, where these summoners, I actually kind of forgot their name, what they are exactly, but they kind of summon these spirits, and they are either around them or they like or on the ground, you know. But genuinely speaking, I have to say, I really hope it doesn't turn out into another Scourge where you just place shades but they are now just spirits on the ground. I highly want that to I just genuinely don't want that to happen, because for that I already have Scourge and I just play shades. I don't want them to be just it's basically a Scourge, but now instead of looking like a shade, it's now a spirit. I don't want that. That's just lame to me, and I hope that they won't do that. Now, I also don't want them to be some sort of pet that just follows you around, that just keeps floating around next to you somewhere and just does something. But I also don't want the Revenant sort of call-out treatment to it, where you place these spirits down and they do something and then they just, you know, pop away. Like, I feel like basically if it's like the placeable shade-like thing, I don't want that, because I already have Scourge. I don't need this to look the same just with spirits. That just feels cheap to me and very lame and not unique by vibe either. I don't want the color either, or sort of the Revenant treatment either, because then there is already the Revenant. Like, I don't need a Revenant 2.0 spec on Necro like that, you know. So I sort of wish that the spirit that we see on screen or on the art that they tease will be the Shroud. And I actually very much believe and want to believe that it will be, because it has the green color, and instead of being like on the ground or something, it's sort of coming out from the Ritualist. I know that, you know, this is artistic sort of thing there, so it could be anything. But realistically speaking, I wish that the spirit will be a sort of a so-called spirit shroud or something like that, you know. And the way I want to imagine it is that the spirit is just visually on you. It's not like a pet or anything. It's just when you pop into shroud, instead of having some stink on you like the harbinger, or being a reaper shroud where you just become darker and stuff like that, or well, sandstorm shroud is technically a shroud as well, but it just makes you kind of like yellowish and kind of like full of sand, and it's very coarse and rough, and I don't like it. But in this one, I wish it would be just the shroud becomes the spirit on you. Now, the way I could imagine this working is that you either get Spirit Shroud skills inside, just like in Reaper Shroud, where your weapon spells get replaced. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of that again. I kind of like the uniqueness of Scourge as well, where you just have additional class sort of profession specific buttons for it, like the F1 to F5 or 4, depending how many skills you get, obviously. But I think, well, I would be honestly kind of fine with either of them, but I would rather like if it would be something similar to Scourge in terms of like the mechanic of that you can just press those skills additionally. And the best way that I could think of while I was also talking about this on stream previously, that what if you could have those skills from, like, let's say that your F1 is your Spirit Shroud. For now, let's just call it Spirit Shroud because that's my idea and I just want to distinct it a little bit. So again, just bear with me here. So your F1 is or ends up being your Spirit Shroud, and then you have something like F2, F3, and F4, and maybe F5. And I will explain why I think we could have less skills because of it. Now, when you are not in Shroud, you can also press your F2, F3, or F4. Again, could be F5, but you could get as many as you want, honestly. We are just theorizing there. And when you pop into your Shroud, those skills flip over to something different, or to a stronger version of them. And I also had an idea on what if when we pop that and they flip over, the spirit would also do something like it copies what you do, sort of, or it like attacks. But in the sense of whatever you kind of more specialize into in the so-called, I don't know, spiritualist at this point, instead of calling it just ritualist. But it could be interesting because I really believe this could be also a healer spec. And they could very, very much give us a healer spec. And I will talk about this as well real quick soon. Oh, why do I think that? Well, real quick, that's kind of funny. But I will talk about it, why I think that it could be also a healer spec, and why I actually almost believe firmly that it will be also viable as a healer spec. Well, okay, maybe not viable, but it could be very much a healer spec as well, beside damage as well. Now, my idea was that depending on how you specialize it, your spirit could also like mimic attacks on you. Probably not like a flat damage amount, you know, based on your damage as such, but imagine if it would proc certain things. If you specialize the condition, then every time you attack or do something or press a spell and you are in your shroud, by the way, this is on when you have the shroud up, the spirit is up on you and it keeps coping or doing something like attacking, and it keeps placing or putting conditions either on single target or in AoE. I'm not sure if it will be how, but obviously the more AoE, the more busted it will be. But if it would just place things on your enemy while you are also attacking, like placing poison or like bleeding or maybe torment on your enemies, like keep just spamming conditions while you're also attacking, you know, something like that could be. I'm not saying that it strictly has to be that. I'm just throwing ideas there, but you know, that could work for something like the more condition damage spec on it. But if you go power with like a spear or something, or greatsword or anything, because they don't want to lock you down into one specific weapon, they could also make it so that it like actually mimics some of the attacks, and it will just duplicate the attack from you, like maybe some sort of delay. Not exactly just one-on-one copied attack, obviously that will be completely busted in like, you know, scaling and everything. But just imagine that the spirit just keeps attacking and just keeps cleaving in front of you because they are also attacking. But if you spec into the other one, like let's say like a more support or even a healer, then it could just keep healing in like sort of an AoE around you or such, you know, like some sort of like a healing spirit around you. Obviously there's many other ways that you could go about it, because I had ideas as well that what if, just coming from the transfusion change for Necro, what if they will do some similar things on the other specs too. I'm not just talking about Necro, but like all the possible upcoming elite specs as well, where they will do the same treatment with a Grandmaster trait where they just simply list that, you know, your greatsword, your dagger, I don't know, your staff, your this and that becomes enhanced with this and this sort of effects, just like they did with transfusion onto the staff. And I think that's also a good idea as long as it's balanced, obviously. Because I actually do like the staff changes on the Necro or with the transfusion. I actually really enjoy that. It's very interesting change and the sort of rework on it, honestly. I have honestly nothing against that. So those are sort of like basic ideas I had about it, but I also have to mention that it's very, very interesting to me. There's like two things I do have to mention that why I suspect it will have a healer spec in it too, with the so-called spiritualist or ritualist, if you want to call it still that. Don't you find it interesting that with the staff now we have extra boons, but the staff also gives and overcaps like something like protection and such as well? That is already given with like so many things, like even with a heal binger or a heal harbinger, you can easily overcap protection, and you can also especially on Scourge now, you can easily overcap protection. This is not based just on the protection, it's just, you know, just a sort of weird thing that they sort of took off the healing from just the transfusion part of both specs, because technically like heal harbinger couldn't heal because of that too much. Well, it could, but it was way less. And now it's kind of placed onto the staff. It's more streamlined into the staff, into weapon. Isn't it interesting that Ritualist used to use staff and was mostly usually, it could be both the offensive and the really good healer slash protection sort of group support, you know? And now they've worked the transfusion sort of support side of the Necro into the staff, and we have also Ritualist staff skin. That's a bit of a weird coincidence to me, but I'm not saying too much about it. I think, like, I don't think there is enough evidence about this, because these are not really evidence. It's just a weird coincidence to me that I still keep in mind, honestly. And I have to say, it's strange because with staff, they made it more possible to use the healing on other basically trait lines. Like, obviously it won't work on Reaper, but it made Healbinger work basically. Just because almost all of your healing is on staff, and you trigger staff things from your shroud skills. And that's why I'm also thinking that with the, you know, if you get something like a speed shroud that is just sitting on you and just, you know, copies or does something around you, whatever you do, or just only works with your F2, F3, F4 skills and does something more when you actually summon the spirit on you, it could work because you still have your F4 on it, you know, and it could still work, and they could work that into that you give protection via your F4. Like, there are many other ways they can make this work, and with the transfusion change as well, it makes more sense to me that the Ritualist, I mean, come on, like in Guild Wars 1, one of the best support was literally Necro Ritualist, because you had good energy management via soul reaping, and Ritualist ended up being one of the best healers slash protective group support ever in Guild Wars 1, with not just because of the spirits. Now, to talk a little bit about my ideas or sort of thoughts that I had, like what kind of, you know, utility skills they could get or such. Yeah, people actually mention on stream too that, like, okay, like spirits, but I kind of feel like I don't want that, because that's just this very lame passive like turret thing. Like, if I want that, I just have minions already. It's basically the same feel. Like, if they are static, then it's just a pain in the ass because they just stay there. And to solve that solution, you would have them make them like last very short amount, just like Kala on Revenant, which again, it would be just basically Kala on Revenant. You just do Revenant 2.0 just on a Necro, you know, elite spec, which I don't want. Not because I don't like it, but because there is already Revenant for that. I don't want that because I like it on Revenant. I tried it, I played that. I don't want that on the Necro, not because I don't like it, but because I want the Necro to be a bit more unique. Now, The other things that popped into my mind was what was something on Ritualist in Guild Wars 1 that was sort of unique, but is also workable in Guild Wars 2. My first idea was weapon spells. If you haven't played Guild Wars 1, the weapon spells were basically unique to the Ritualist, and what they did was that they basically placed something on you, a effect, but despite the name, just because it's called weapon spell, it doesn't mean that it only triggers because you do something with your weapon or you hit something with your weapon. No, it was both defensive and offensive, and that's why I'm thinking that it could work very well. Because Ritualist had a lot of defensive weapon spells, but also could go into offensive with either lifesteal, which you could also use for both sort of an offense-defense, like a very heavy middle ground. Because if you go healer, you could maybe increase the health siphon effect from it, so people still do damage, but them dealing damage or continuously hitting the target for, you know, or a target for, I don't know, 5 seconds, or I don't know how long it could last. It basically, you still do more damage because you are technically doing lifesteal in it, but you also heal yourself. It's pretty much similar to what we got with the dagger in the second trait line on Necro lately, where you can place that effect on people and they just, every time they hit the target, they will basically heal off of it as well. They could pretty much work that out as well, in my opinion, and there could be some cool elite weapon spells as well, like you will obviously get one, but it also fits more into the support as well, in a sense that you could actually make a healing, because you have to think about it that they will make all those unique profession-specific utilities also your healing skill. Now, if I think about something like, let's go into order skills from Guild Wars 1, I'm not sure how that would work as like a healing skill, because they usually still tied to the same team and what they do, but I'm not sure how it would work on you. Maybe, but at that point, it could be weapon spell too, because if it does something like you press an order skill that's heals you, and then heals your allies by them doing damage, and again doing basically maybe like a life siphoning effect, then you kind of again almost do the same that you could do with like a weapon spell. So I'm not really sure, but again, the reason I'm thinking why it wouldn't be order, or why I think it could be order spells as well, is because of the icon itself. So the T's icon, to me, I believe this is the Necro one, and I will show it on screen as well. This little kind of curved dagger, I think it's even called like a Chris dagger, or I actually have no idea how to say the name. But the way I will just describe it is that it's more close to a ceremonial or sort of sacrificial dagger that you very typically see in fantasy as well. You know, it's more close to it. And again, Necro is more, you know, like typically Necro and Ritualist was the one in Guild Wars 1 as well that were typically unique, where you sacrifice health to cast certain spells. That was both shared between Ritualist and Necro only. As far as I remember, I don't remember anything else having health sacrifice ever, apart from Necro and then later Ritualist in Guild Wars 1. And that's like a theme, and that's why I'm thinking that like, what if, you know, it does come with it, that it comes with like health sacrifice, possibly as like a minor thing in it, but that's also the thing already on the sword. And that's why also I kind of like trying to tie things together, because if you think about it, when we got the double swords on Necro, when you press the secondary skills, they sacrifice your health for additional benefits, or, you know, to basically be able to cast the flip over skills. And, you know, that's weird, because that's or those weapons come from Sato, which will they work into the Ritualists as well, very likely. So that also fits in, but I wouldn't think about order. I get it that this is Necro, and the order skills or order spells were Necro skills originally in Guild Wars 1, and they were kind of cool because they were party-wide and like had really large range, basically compass range, but it was also very short amount, because, you know, they very typically had like 5 seconds of duration only, which technically in Guild Wars 2 it would very much fit in, because a lot of buffs or buffs that you could provide to your party are not talking about boons, but like a bit more class specific buffs or something. They are a bit more on lower duration, like 3 to 4 5 seconds usually, or maybe 6 or something like that they do. But I also feel like that will be very busted a little bit, because if they make something like order skills that are very unique to the Necro, and I will talk about this a little bit on a slightly different video where I talk about, or I wish to talk about uniqueness versus, homogenization, basically, that people, talk about a lot of times or mention around Guild Wars 2. Going back, I think since we are getting a elite spec, the elite spec's utility skills shouldn't be exactly fully necro themed, and that's why I think that order skills won't be a thing. And that's why I think that weapon spells will make more sense to me, because they were a ritualist thing, but they were also not inherently a super OP thing, except for maybe splinter weapon, obviously. But they were still useful. They had some uniqueness too, because you could do things with them. You could make a party member, do more damage, but not necessarily. Actually, honestly, they could literally give us splinter weapon in some sense as well. Like, imagine that one weapon spell just makes it that your attacks just splash harder or something. Honestly, I don't even know. Or maybe certain effect that you do is now applied in AOE. Although I genuinely wouldn't see the point of that, because considering most fights are single target, like in raids you're just fighting the boss. There are no ads spawning in or anything. Like, it's very rare when you're fighting like multiple ads or anything, and strikes especially. You're mostly just fighting the boss. So I don't think something like a splinter weapon would come back, obviously, but it could be a fun idea, like a different way. I'm not saying that it has to be a splash like it was in Guild Wars 1, but just for the name's sake, it could come back. Who knows? But I very much believe that they might actually give us weapon spells with the Ritualist. But again, they could make something absolutely new and more unique or something more different. But I do believe and hope that the Necro might be getting very lucky with this, or at least I hope, because honestly speaking, to me, Harbinger was kind of a very miss when it came out with End of Dragons. I just didn't feel the power in it. Honestly, it was kind of weird. I do agree that I don't see the blight mechanic too much of a wear, because it's a little bit like the technically kind of the only, almost the only spec with like a heavily detrimental effect on you, and then all you gain from it is just a like a larger self-sustain out of it, honestly. But I just don't see the payout from that, because I don't know, it's just kind of weird. I'm not saying that it's bad necessarily, or like super bad, but it's kind of weird. But yeah, that's basically most of the things. Again, I kind of find it strange again that they have dagger, with like the sacrifice soul icon, because I firmly believe that will be the Necro. And we have the sword from Soto that also comes with health sacrifice. And then you also have spear that like has a lot of healing, while self-healing. And then they also rework the staff into the blood magic line, which is by now purely the support trait line, basically. Not necessary, but it is the trait line that you need if you want to be support. So it would make sense for them that if we get a ritualist or so-called spiritualist or something, that could actually very much be all three of the roles, sort of. Like, it could be healer, and by the obviously depending on how the traits will work out, I really hope that we'll be able to provide alacrity or quickness, just for the sake that if we get a healer out of it, I kind of find it strange that the healer must provide either alacrity or quickness. You just cannot exist just purely as a healer without either of those, because then you just cannot be in group content or really anywhere, because it just makes no sense because of that. So I really hope that we will end up having something where we can play with either quickness or alacrity. I feel like this might be another alacrity provider, or maybe, who knows, maybe even both, honestly. Like, at this point, maybe they will make something again, just like how Chrono has it, that they just, I can just swap between two little trait lines, and now I'm quickness. You don't want quickness? Oh, don't worry, I will just click the other button, and I'm now alacrity. And just be that easy, because why would anyone else have that for some reason, other than Chrono? Because at this point, like, why play anything else other than Chrono at this point in the game? But that's a different thing, honestly, to talk about. But yeah, those are sort of my thoughts about the sort of ritualist or spiritualist. Honestly, I have no idea how to call it. But yeah, I again, too long didn't read, or too long didn't watch I really hope that we will have a spirit shroud, and the spirit won't be a pet that just follows us and like be clunky and whatnot, and instead will be like an extra shroud upon us visually, where it just sits upon us and it just does things for us, or gives us extra skills or whatnot. So that's basically it. And yeah, if you have any more ideas, I will gladly check them out in the comments and such. These were my own thoughts that I had and ideas. I very likely completely forgot to talk about or mention a couple of things about this, because my mind is everywhere and I don't script these videos at all. I just literally just sit here, start recording, and just talk, and whatever comes out comes out. So that's why the random rambling occasionally. But yeah, that's basically it. Again, if you have more ideas about this or more theories what it could be, we will see soon. And anyway, honestly, once the blog post is up, they will probably not show us how it works yet, very likely, and they will tease these like through weeks eventually, just like they did pre-UD and such. But we will eventually see who was right, who was wrong. But to be fair, it's not really about who was wrong or who was right. I just like making up ideas and coming up with ideas. I think there's a thrill to it, and I think everyone enjoys that. But again, I also know that some people will be probably very, very much disappointed in what it will be in the end, because you cannot please everyone. But that will be every single elite spec in the end. But these are my ideas, and also why I would like it to be an actuality, and why I wouldn't like it to be an actuality if comes out different. So I try to be on both sides about things, a bit more logical, not just about like, oh, that would be cool, but I never think through why that wouldn't work exactly, and such. So yeah, that's it. Again, if you have more ideas or more theories about that, write it in the comments. I will not yap about this further. And thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time. If I end up making more yapping videos, that's really it. Bye guys, have a good one.